This is a retelling of a true story. I've been in this industry for decades, and believe me when I tell you, I've seen just about everything. But what happened that day with Daniel was something I will never forget. We were filming the paralytic scene, one of the most important moments of the season, and everything was going perfectly. The actors were at the top of their game. The light was exactly what we needed. The crew was running like a well-oiled machine. But then I noticed something strange. Daniel, our camera operator on camera 2, had gone completely still. The camera was still rolling, but he was crying. These were not quiet tears. This was something deeper, something visceral. I knew immediately it was not technical and it was not professional. It was personal. Something had reached into a place inside him that even he probably did not know existed. I was right there in the middle of the scene, delivering lines I had rehearsed hundreds of times. Rise, take up your mat, and walk. As an actor, I always try to connect emotionally to every moment. But that take was different. There was something in the air, an energy I still cannot explain. When we finished and I heard cut, I looked over to where Daniel was standing behind his camera, and I saw him completely broken, tears running down his face. In that instant, I knew something bigger than all of us had happened on that set. It was not my performance that touched him. I know that for certain. It was the story itself, the message behind the words. I spoke with him briefly afterward, and even though he did not say much at the time, I could see in his eyes that he was wrestling with something deep. Months later, I learned about his brother, and suddenly everything made sense. Sometimes I think we are just instruments, you know? We are here telling an ancient story, but that story is still alive. It still finds the people who need to hear it. Daniel did not need me to preach anything to him. He just needed to be there in that moment, and the story did the rest. That is what is most humbling and most powerful about all of this. And for Daniel, that moment did not begin as some spiritual turning point. It began like any other day on set. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the makeshift set outside Weatherford. Daniel adjusted the viewfinder on his camera and settled into position, focusing on the dust drifting through the dry morning air. He had been working as a cameraman on The Chosen for 3 weeks, and to him, it was just another job. A well-paying one, sure, but nothing more. "Daniel, you good on camera too?" The assistant director's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Ready," he replied in his usual professional tone, flat and emotionless. At 32, Daniel had filmed everything. Commercials, documentaries, weddings, even boring corporate videos. This project was only different because of its scale. Thousands of followers waited for each episode with almost religious devotion. He never understood that kind of passion. To Daniel, religion was an invented comfort for people who could not face reality. And his reality at that moment was brutally clear. His younger brother, Matteo, was dying. The phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. He knew it was his mother again, calling from St. David's Hospital in Austin, 2 hours away. Lately, the news was never good. Terminal pancreatic cancer. The doctors had given Mateo somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. Every call was a reminder of how powerless he was. "Everybody in position. We're going with the paralytic scene," the first assistant director announced. Daniel took a deep breath and focused on his job. That was the only thing he could control. The perfect frame, the lighting, the focus. The actors took their places. Jonathan Roumie, who played Jesus in the series, stood at the center of the scene, surrounded by extras dressed in period robes. The scene recreated the moment when Jesus heals the paralytic in Capernaum, a story Daniel vaguely remembered hearing once in some college history class. Action. The camera started rolling. Daniel followed the movement with mechanical precision, adjusting the zoom as the 4 men lowered the paralytic through the roof with ropes. The actor playing the sick man trembled convincingly, his pleading eyes fixed on Roumie. It was all performance, all technique. Daniel knew that. Roumie stepped toward the paralytic with an expression Daniel had to admit was impressive. The actor had a gift for conveying compassion with nothing but a look. He knelt beside the man. "Son, your sins are forgiven." Roumie's voice was soft but steady. Daniel adjusted the focus to capture the reaction on the paralytic's face. The extras murmured among themselves just as the script required. It was a well-choreographed scene, nothing more. But then something changed. Roumie reached out and touched the paralytic's shoulder. "Rise, take up your mat, and walk." In that instant, Daniel felt something he could not explain. A wave of heat rushed through his body, as if someone had switched on an invisible furnace all around him. His hands, normally rock steady on the camera, began to shake. The viewfinder went blurry, not because of a technical issue, but because his eyes had suddenly filled with tears. What the hell was happening? He tried to focus, tried to hold the frame, but the knot in his throat kept tightening. The scene continued in front of him. The paralytic slowly stood to his feet, tears streaming down his cheeks. He lifted his mat and began to walk through the crowd as the people around him burst into celebration. Daniel could not look away. His fingers slipped off the focus control. By now, the tears were falling freely down his face, soaking into the 3-day beard he had not bothered to shave that morning. "Cut!" the director shouted. "Perfect! That's the take!" The set erupted in applause. The actors relaxed, stepping out of character. The crew moved quickly to prepare the next angle. But Daniel stayed frozen in place, the camera still in his trembling hands, unable to process what he had just felt. "Hey, you okay?" Marcus, the camera assistant, touched his shoulder. Daniel quickly wiped his face with the back of his hand, embarrassed. Yeah, just dust in my eye." Marcus looked at him skeptically but did not press. "Okay, take a minute. Next setup is in 15. Daniel nodded and lowered the camera from the tripod, his hands still shaking. He walked away from the set toward the break area where water bottles and folding chairs sat under a white canopy. He dropped into one of the chairs, his heart pounding. This was ridiculous. He was a professional. He had filmed far more emotional scenes without blinking. He had documented funerals. He had captured the last breath of a soldier in a war documentary. Never had he lost his composure like this. And yet, here he was. He pulled out his phone. 4 missed calls from his mother. 2 text messages. "Daniel, please call. Mateo is asking for you. The doctors say we need to prepare. Maybe it's time for you to come." He squeezed his eyes shut. How was he supposed to face that? How was he supposed to look at his little brother, the kid who used to follow him everywhere when they were children, now reduced to a skeleton in a hospital bed? And for what? Just to watch him die? No, he did not believe in miracles. He did not believe in a God who would allow good people like Matteo to suffer. So why could he not stop thinking about that scene? Why did those words keep echoing in his mind like something impossible to silence? Rise and walk. "Daniel, we need camera 2 on the next angle." Marcus's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. He stood up, slipped his phone away, and went back to work. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a crack in the armor of certainty he had built around his heart. And that crack, small as it was, terrified him more than anything else. By late afternoon, the set felt heavy and drained. Daniel finished the rest of the day on autopilot, answering when people spoke to him without really hearing them. His mind was somewhere else, split between the image of the paralytic rising to his feet and the image of Matteo lying in that hospital bed. By the time he packed up his gear and walked toward his Ford F-150 in the makeshift parking lot, the sun was already dropping behind the Texas hills, painting the sky in orange and purple. Normally, he would have noticed a sunset like that. He might even have pulled out his personal camera to capture it. That evening, he barely saw it. "Daniel, wait a second." He turned and saw Sarah, the production coordinator, walking toward him with quick, purposeful steps. She was in her 40s, with brown hair always pulled back in the same ponytail, and an efficiency that bordered on military. "Yeah?" Daniel asked, leaning against his truck. "I just wanted to check on you. Marcus said you had a rough moment during the paralytic scene. Are you okay?" Daniel tightened his jaw. He did not need sympathy, and he definitely did not want it. "I'm fine. It was just a moment. It won't happen again." Sarah studied him with an expression he could not quite read. It was not pity. It was something deeper, something more knowing. "Look, I know we don't know each other that well outside of work," she said, folding her arms. "But I've been in this industry for 15 years. I've seen a lot. And I'll tell you this, when this series hits you that hard, it usually isn't random." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Really? We're talking about divine signs now?" "I'm not talking about religion," Sarah said calmly. "I'm talking about whatever it is you're carrying. We all carry something, Daniel. And sometimes a story like this has a way of opening you up, whether you want it to or not." He looked away toward the horizon. "My brother is dying." The words came out before he could stop them. "Cancer. The doctors say weeks, maybe days." The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. Sarah nodded slowly. "I'm so sorry. I don't need pity. It is what it is. That's life. People are born, people die. There's no master plan, no reason. Just biology and bad luck." "That's really what you believe?" Daniel looked at her directly. That's what I know. Sarah nodded again, but there was something in her face that suggested she was not convinced. Okay, just take care of yourself. And if you need time off to go see him, let me know. Thanks, Daniel muttered, even though he had no intention of taking the time. Sarah walked away, leaving him alone in the nearly empty lot. Daniel got into his truck and started the engine, but he did not drive. His hands rested motionless on the steering wheel. Then his phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Matteo himself. Bro, where are you? It'd be cool to see you before, you know. Miss you, man. Daniel felt it like a knife to the chest. Matteo was 26. He should have been finishing grad school, going out with friends, living. He should not have been sending what sounded like goodbye messages. Daniel typed back, I'm at work. When this project is over, I'll come see you. I promise. It was a lie. The project would last at least 2 more weeks. Matteo did not have 2 more weeks. He put the phone away and drove back to his apartment in Fort Worth, a small 1-bedroom place he barely used for anything except sleep. On the way home, he passed a Catholic church, Our Lady of Guadalupe. The lights were on, and he could see silhouettes moving inside. People praying, people looking for answers in an ancient book and in rituals even older than that. Daniel pressed harder on the gas and left the church behind. But that night, alone in his apartment, he did something he had not done in years. He looked up the scene on YouTube. Someone had already uploaded a behind-the-scenes clip from that day's filming. It was not his exact shot, but it was close enough. He watched it once, then again, then again. Every time he felt the same strange warmth, the same tightness in his chest. It was as if something or someone was trying to tell him something, and he was either too stubborn or too afraid to listen. At 2 in the morning, his phone rang. It was his mother. With shaking hands, he answered. Mom, Daniel. Her voice was breaking apart. It's Matteo. He got worse. The doctors say he may not make it through tomorrow. Please, son, come. He needs you. Daniel closed his eyes. The tears he had held back all day finally came. I'm coming. I'm leaving right now. He hung up and sat there in the darkness of his living room, the laptop still open, frozen on the scene of the paralytic. Rise and walk. Why would those words not leave him alone? He stood up and packed a small bag. In 2 hours, he would be in Austin. In 2 hours, he would see his brother for the last time. But before he left, he did something impulsive, something he never imagined he would do. He knelt beside his bed. His hands came together awkwardly, not even really sure how to pray. I don't know if you're there, he whispered into the dark. I don't know if any of this means anything. But if there is something real in all of this, if you can actually hear me, please don't let me lose him. There was no answer, no sign, only the silence of his empty apartment. He stood up feeling ridiculous and desperate all at once, then walked out to his truck. Austin was waiting. Matteo was waiting. And Daniel, the atheist who had not believed in anything for more than 20 years, had just said his first prayer. Interstate 35 was nearly empty at 3 in the morning. Daniel drove with both hands locked on the wheel, the speedometer pushing 85, 10 miles over the limit. He did not care. He just wanted to get there. Highway lights flashed past like shooting stars. Beyond them, the Texas landscape was nothing but dark, broken only by the occasional glow of a distant farmhouse. The radio stayed off. Daniel did not want music. He did not want voices. He wanted nothing except the engine, the road, and his own thoughts. But those thoughts would not leave him alone. He kept seeing the scene in his mind, the paralytic, the outstretched hand, those words, rise and walk. Why that scene? Why had that moment shattered him when so many others had not? He had filmed plenty of scenes on the show by then, moments the cast and crew said were just as moving. But this one had been different. Then his phone rang again. It was his mother. Mom, I'm almost there, maybe 30 more minutes. Hurry, son. Her voice was thin now, fragile, as if it might break apart at any second. He's asking for you, his mother said. He keeps telling me he's waiting for Daniel. I'm almost there. Hold on, Matteo, I'm coming. He ended the call and pressed the accelerator a little harder. St. David's Hospital stood lit up like a beacon in the night. Daniel parked crookedly near the emergency entrance and ran inside. A nurse at the reception desk tried to stop him. Sir, you can't. My brother, Mateo Reyes, oncology, 4th floor. The nurse saw something in his face that made her soften immediately. Take the elevator to your right. Daniel ran. The elevator felt unbearably slow. When the doors finally opened on the 4th floor, he found his mother sitting in the waiting area with her face buried in her hands. The moment she saw him, she jumped to her feet. Daniel, thank God. She wrapped her arms around him tightly. He could feel her trembling. "How is he?" "Weak, very weak, but he's conscious. He's been waiting for you." She led him down the sterile hallway, thick with that unmistakable hospital smell, disinfectant mixed with sickness. They stopped at room 417. "He's in there," she said quietly. "Go in alone. He wants to talk to you." Daniel swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by the monitor's blinking numbers and wavering lines. In the bed lay a figure he barely recognized as his brother. Matteo had lost so much weight he looked like a shadow of himself, but his eyes were still the same, bright, intelligent, full of life somehow, even now. "You made it," Matteo whispered with a faint smile. Daniel pulled up a chair beside the bed and took his brother's hand. So fragile he was almost afraid to hold it too tightly. "I'm here, man. I'm sorry it took me so long." "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here now." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the monitors filled the space between them. "Mom says you're working on that religious show," Matteo said after a while. "The Chosen or something?" "Yeah, it's a good job." Matteo looked at him with those sharp, searching eyes that had always seemed to notice more than Daniel wanted to show. "Has it changed anything? Being there around all of that?" Daniel wanted to lie. He wanted to say no, that it was just another job. But something in his brother's face stripped away the instinct to hide. "I don't know," he admitted. "Something weird happened today during a scene. I can't explain it." "Tell me." So Daniel did. He told him about the paralytic scene, about the feeling that came out of nowhere, about the tears he could not control. He told him about the warmth and about how the words rise and walk would not leave him alone. Matteo listened in silence, nodding now and then. When Daniel finished, his brother smiled. "You know what I think," Matteo said, his voice weak but steady. "I think you received something you needed." Daniel frowned. "What does that even mean?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe a question, maybe an answer, but something your soul needed to hear." "I don't believe in the soul," Daniel said automatically. Matteo smiled faintly. "I know. You were always the logical one, the practical one. I was the dreamer." He coughed, a harsh sound that made Daniel tense instantly. "But I'll tell you this," Matteo continued once he caught his breath. "These last few months, facing all this, I've seen things I can't explain with logic. Moments of peace when I should have been terrified. Coincidences that don't feel like coincidences. Call it whatever you want, God, the universe, fate, but there's something bigger than us. Then why is this happening to you?" The question came out with more pain than Daniel meant to reveal. "If there's a God, why is he taking your life?" Matteo squeezed his hand with what little strength he had left. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But I've decided to trust that it means something, even if I can't see it. Because the alternative," he paused, breathing carefully, "the alternative is believing that this is all meaningless, just empty suffering. And that would kill me before the cancer does." Daniel felt tears spill down his face again. "I don't want to lose you. And I don't want to go," Matteo said softly. "But if I do, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't close your heart. Don't let my death make you harder, more bitter, more shut down. That thing you felt on set. Don't ignore it. Maybe it's the beginning of something. Maybe it isn't. But promise me you'll at least consider it." Daniel could not speak. He only nodded, tears falling onto the hospital blanket. "I love you, brother," Matteo whispered. "You were always my hero. The guy who could fix anything. The one who was never afraid of anything. But it's okay to be afraid. It's okay not to have all the answers." "I love you too," Daniel managed to say. "So much." They stayed that way, hand in hand, until Matteo finally drifted to sleep. Daniel remained beside him all night, watching his brother's chest rise and fall with each labored breath, memorizing every detail of his face. Matteo died at dawn with Daniel and their mother by his side. It was quiet, almost peaceful. One moment he was there and the next, he simply was not. The days that followed blurred together, funeral arrangements, phone calls, paperwork. Daniel moved through it all like a machine, doing what had to be done without really feeling any of it. It was as if some part of him had shut off completely. 3 days after the funeral, he went back to the set of The Chosen. He did not have to return that soon. Sarah had offered him more time, but he needed to keep his hands busy, his mind fixed on something other than the empty space Matteo had left behind. That afternoon, they were filming another scene, this time Jesus speaking to Mary Magdalene after the resurrection. Daniel set up his camera mechanically, checking the light, the focus, every detail. Action. The scene began. Mary Magdalene was weeping, convinced Jesus' body had been taken. Then Jesus appeared behind her and simply said her name. Mary. She turned and recognized him at once, with a mix of shock, joy, and relief that the actress captured perfectly. Daniel kept filming, but his mind had drifted elsewhere. He was thinking about that final night with Matteo, about his brother's words, about the peace that had settled over him even in the face of death. Then, without expecting it, Daniel felt it again, that same warmth. But this time it was different. It was not just warmth. It felt like someone had placed a steady, comforting hand on his shoulder. And in that moment, Daniel understood something. It was not that God had healed Matteo. It was not that some physical miracle had happened. But something had changed. Matteo had found peace. And now, somehow, Daniel was being invited to find it too. Maybe faith was not about having every answer. Maybe it was about being willing to ask the question. Maybe it was about being open to the possibility that there was more than what he could see with his eyes or measure with his logic. When the scene ended, Daniel did not cry this time, but he smiled, a small smile, a sad one, but real. "Good shot," Marcus said, walking over. "Yeah," Daniel replied. "It was perfect." That night before leaving the set, Daniel did something he had never done before. He walked over to the area where the Bibles were kept, the ones some of the actors used to prepare for their roles. He picked one up and flipped through it until he found the story of the paralytic in the Gospel of Mark. He read the words he had heard days earlier, now printed on the page. "Rise, take up your mat, and walk." Daniel closed the book and held it against his chest for a moment. He did not know exactly what he believed now. It was not as if all his doubts had suddenly disappeared, but something had changed. There was a crack in his certainty, and through that crack, for the first time in years, a little light was getting in. Maybe that was enough for now. Maybe that was the miracle he never knew he needed. 6 months later, Daniel was still working on The Chosen, but now it felt different. He no longer saw each scene as just another job. He saw it as a story that might actually be saying something. He had not gone through some dramatic conversion. He had not become religious overnight, but he had started asking questions. He had started staying open. And on the nights when the loneliness of losing Matteo became too heavy to carry, he remembered that moment on set, that unexplained warmth, that presence. And he found comfort in thinking that maybe, just maybe, his brother had been right. Maybe they were not alone after all. The camera never lied, but there were some things a camera could not capture. Things only the heart could see once it finally dared to look.